Chapter 3, The Heart of the Matter. Every mother and father want their newborn to come through their birth safely. They hold fast in the hope that they will hold their new child in their arms. And that child will be healthy and happy, free of any complications. My parents were no exception. Having run the gauntlet 8 times, they knew a thing or two. They were by now experienced in every sense of the word. That experience had taught them, no birth is the same. Each comes with its own set of challenges and surprises. Mind you, after 8, you would think that they had it down pat. Still, they approached my arrival with a mixture of faith and fatalism. Looking back, there was a stoicism in the generations not always conspicuous in parents today. Fair to say that most first-world parents now have it considerably easier than their forebears. Those who had survived the Second World War thought of themselves in much the same way. Faith and fatalism had got us through that terrible ordeal. Many thought no doubt that we could go back to the way things were before. But for many others, particularly the young, there was no going back. The country, recovering as it was, now faced a very different world with a very uncertain future. Life for many Australians was still one of hard yards. Just as it was before the war. Many must have wondered, if as a country, we had gained anything at all from the horror and sacrifice of that conflict. But we had survived. We had overcome. And we had achieved, despite the odds. Maybe that's what our young nation needed to learn. That as a country, as a people, anything's possible, when you finally stand on your own 2 feet. Those 6 years had certainly shown us that. We learnt what was possible in the face of the impossible. The young were now being brought into a new world of hope. Hope that it had all been worthwhile. And my parents, like millions of working-class people, started to gain a small sense of that hope. A feeling encouraged by the slow return to normal living, of work and family, friends and neighbors. To once again, enjoy the simple pleasure of a Sunday afternoon. Activity was everywhere, and with it the seduction of newfound optimism. Nowhere was this truer than at the twin frontiers of science and medicine. New words entered the daily lexicon. Words like vaccine and penicillin. Words once found only in medical journals, seemed to thrive in the post-war theater of hope and promise. In the midst of all this hope and expectation, I arrived at 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month, 1949. I arrived as most travelers do, tired and emotional and a little off color. More than a little, actually. I was what people called a blue baby. The doctors would later identify my trouble as atrial sepal defect or ASD. Unfortunately, their diagnosis did not arrive with me. It would come some 2 years later after I was rushed to hospital with whooping cough, which then developed into pneumonia. Their news to my parents was brief: I had been born with a hole in my heart. And the tests and x-rays confirmed it. Right from the get-go, that little defect was to have the most profound influence on my life. The heart of the matter, as it were. So, from day one, blue was to be my color along with my eyes. The Ryan family was already a big family by the time I arrived. However, having come in as number 9 in the line and a little bluer than my siblings, seemed to galvanize the family. A family that I was relieved to discover, thrived in the atmosphere created by our parents. While few of us remember our early years with any clarity, most can recall if we felt loved or not in our infancy. It is the prime experience when we are very young. It's what tells us that we are safe, that we are wanted, and that this is a good place to be. Not one of my brothers and sisters felt anything less than loved and unconditionally loved at that. It was the trademark of the Ryan household and my earliest impression of life. Being a blue baby only enhanced that experience. In case you're wondering, blue babies are so called because their hearts are not pumping enough blood, due to the hole in the heart. It was a relatively common condition at the time. As my parents and family became more knowledgeable about my condition, they also became aware of other children in the community around Wollongong, who suffered the same symptoms. A bit like buying a certain make or color of car, you start to see them everywhere. Atrial sepal defect. There was a lot of learning to be done about my condition and not just by the doctors. Mum and Dad found themselves in the front line of the new frontier of cardiology, and despite rearing 8 other healthy children, it was back to the drawing board with me. First up was what to look out for and what to avoid. For a start, all the usuals. Nil by mouth. Check. Nothing off the floor or out of cupboards. Check. Play area dangers. Check. Knowing what I was doing and where. Check. But there were some new rules as well. Most importantly of these were monitoring my condition constantly. Making sure I didn't get excited or overactive. Making sure coughs and sore throats didn't get out of hand. And most importantly, plan excursions and errands a little more carefully. This last one caught Mum out a few times. Quite understandable. With 4 older brothers and sisters still at home and now me and my baby sister Colleen, Mum had a lot on her plate. And now she had to redouble her efforts with me. And the risks were greater when I was away from home. An uphill battle. Mum went on her weekly trip to Wollongong to shop. I was about 4 and Mum had Colleen in the pram. In those days the top end of Wollongong was a very busy part of town, and it housed all the shops that made good the family's budget. They also provided Mum with close access to Wollongong Station. A vital component in planning any trip to town with 2 young children in tow. That and the fact that she had to be home before school was out. Which made catching the 4 o'clock train a must. So, there we were, Colleen in the pram surrounded by the week's groceries, Mum pushing the pram and me walking for all I was worth trying to keep up. As we made our way uphill to the Jubilee Bridge for the 4 o'clock train, we found ourselves in the midst of the afternoon rush hour. As we approached the bridge the path got steeper, and I began to struggle to keep pace with the pram. My breathing became labored as my chest got tighter. My lungs became more constricted and my breathing shorter and shallower. I began to panic. In the midst of all this I lost sight of the pram and Mum in the crowd, now converging on the footbridge. Frightened and gasping for breath, I gave up and took shelter against the wall of a shop. I couldn't move, I could barely breathe, but at least I was out of the crowd. Then my body began to shut down. I vomited once and then again. Shocked, some of the crowd stopped to check on me. Every breath that rasped from my lungs was pure torture. I remember collapsing and hands on my shoulders and arms, voices trying to comfort me. Suddenly there was Mum, frantic and distressed. How long had it been since she had lost track of me? I don't know. Maybe 5 minutes. As breathless as I was, she bent down and picked me up, wiping away the vomit from my mouth. She had had a battle of her own in that crowd. Realizing I was nowhere to be seen, she turned back with the pram loaded with Colleen and groceries. She must have had a job of it, pressing against the crowd moving up the hill. The panic she experienced that day was close to mine. Needing a rest herself, she parked the pram and the shopping out of harm's way and took me aside and held me until my breathing returned and the panic in my face started to drain away. "I'm so sorry, lovey," she said. We both did a little learning that afternoon, as we sat together on Wollongong Station waiting for the later train home. In that one moment, all the medical jargon and a doctor speak translated through experience to me and my family. My poor mother. She was beside herself for having left me to my fate to catch the early train home. Home where she was desperately needed to be, as my brothers and sisters would soon be filing in the door from school. That would be every other day, but not this day. This day would change forever my parents' understanding of life with me, beyond the 4 walls of Rothley Road. As a result of that near disaster, Dad constructed a little platform which he attached to the pram for me to sit when I began to tire. It fitted just right and took the worry from Mum whenever we went shopping. Although as I grew it left her with a heavier pram to push. The cotton wool kid. That night my father and mother engaged in earnest conversation. The future had a distinct look about it, and it was not a good look. It was after that excursion to Wollongong that they decided I would be the cotton wool kid. It was further decided that my mother's right-hand girl, my sister Veronica, would be given the job of being my parents' eyes and ears. Veronica was the one person Mum knew she could rely on through all kinds of weather. But it was to have a long-term effect on Bub, as we called her. You see, by this time there were 10 children in the family, and the 3 eldest had already moved on into their adult lives. And the next in line, Peter, was about to head overseas to further his career as a jockey. This cast Veronica as Mum's proxy. It was inevitable that she would resent it. It took from her young years and put her at loggerheads with her younger siblings. She never got to spend time with her friends and socialize. Even after she had left school and began working. And my situation made it even worse. Those years left a deep mark on her. She was always generous with her time and loving to Colleen and I. But there was a hardness and a resentment she never could shake. Nevertheless, Veronica took the new responsibility with her usual mixture of fortitude and relish. She was such a caring soul, it was a natural extension of her personality and presence within the family. But it wasn't long before she too was confronted by the seriousness of my condition. One afternoon at the beach, she was overseeing me playing at the very edge of the surf, when I was engulfed by a few bigger waves. I wasn't washed under, but the shock set off a panic attack and I quickly started to turn blue and struggle for breath. Ever cool in a crisis, Veronica quickly gathered me from the water and calmed me down with reassuring words reminding me that I was safe. She began to breathe with me to get my breathing back to its regular rhythm. Not bad for a 12-year-old. But the word was out. I was a full-time job. The older ones took their turns to watch over me night and day. Even my brothers, who as time went by would come to play an increasingly important role in my life. 1953. Rose-colored glasses aside, this was how it really was for me and my brothers and sisters. It was the year before I went to school. Life in the Ryan household was, as it was in all large families, another year of change and changes. My eldest sister Joy was a nurse who lived at Wollongong Hospital. Bill, the oldest of my brothers, was training to be a teacher at Wagga Teachers College in the Riverina. Kevin was training to be a fitter and turner at John Lycett's at Port Kembla, and Peter was still in high school at Christian Brothers in Wollongong. A little over a year later, he would begin work at Clary Messiter's dry cleaning business in Crown Street. Veronica, John, Patrick, and Mark were all entrenched in various years in the Catholic school system. And a young woman, who went by the name of Elizabeth, was crowned Queen of England. It all just seems like yesterday. Getting by. Hard to imagine now, but there was a time when most Australians got by without an awful lot. That's not the good old days talking. Just the simple truth of it. Back then, we accepted things as they were and got on with it. Little was taken for granted because little was on offer. The Ryan family was typical of any other family of the day or district. A no-nonsense, dyed-in-the-wool, hard yards, blue-collar family. And as such, we were raised on those most holy of holy trinities. Family, church, and money. And you never let the first two get between you and the latter. The first lesson of life was that the coin of the realm was hard to come by. Coin of the realm. Money in my childhood was tangible. It was what you had on you. Or at the very least what was left according to the last entry in your savings book. The currency, as I recall, was distinctly British. Unlike today, left or right of a decimal point. But what was really unique was the affinity we all had with the currency. Any discussion about money was akin to a second language. Every coin or banknote went by at least 2 names. And it paid to be familiar with all of them. So you get a better idea of what us kids needed to know. I'll walk you through the money as it was. So here we go. Mind the step. Your 2 basic coins were the penny and the halfpenny, called a halfpenny. Your penny was worth 1 cent in today's market. And your halfpenny was worth about half of that. Hard to believe now, but you could actually purchase a lot with a penny. Particularly after school at the sweets counter at the local store. Both coins were made out of copper and for reasons of security were often stored in glass jars or an old sock. Next was the threepence or 3 pence. Affectionately known as oitre, from the French of course. 2 cents today, and it was the first of the silver coins. Then there was the zac or 6 pence. Worth 5 cents now, and you needed 2 to make a shilling. The shilling was mainly known by its colloquial name of a dinar or a bob. Probably due to some tenuous link to Sir Robert Walpole, who invented patronage. Or something. A bob was worth 12 pennies or 2 zacs or 4 trays. That's 10 cents these days. So much for patronage. But for us kids it was the start of the serious money. Now came the florin. 2 shillings or 2 bob, as it was more rightly known. It was the largest of the silver coins and it was worth, wait for it, 24 pennies, or 8 trays, 4 zacs, or 2 shillings. 20 cents these days. The start of the serious money for the adults was the first of the banknotes. 10 shillings, or as most called it 10 bob. That's $1 to you. It was worth 1/2 a pound, or 5 2 bobs, or 10 single shillings, which is how it got the name 10 bob. Some referred to it as half a nicker. Although what befell the other half I shudder to think. Finally, there was the pound. Or quid. In our house it was the main note of the day. There were of course others, occasionally cited, the fiver, the tenner, the 20, the 50. There was also the guinea, valued at £1, 1 shilling or 21 shillings, wait for age. It was mainly cited in upmarket shops and the racetrack. Thinking back, we must have walked around with half our body weight in coin. Shopkeepers, I can remember, got tongue-tied just giving you change. There was also something called a sovereign, but that was only cited on rare occasions and was usually accompanied by a prime minister. But for me, ninth in line and last in charge for the Ryan family, my biggest problem was trying to work out how many jelly beans, musk sticks, jelly babies, or licorice bullets I could get for tuppence halfpenny. That's 2.5 cents in case you're wondering.